I know a lot of people in Baton Rouge that I've met through my dad, and they go, well, okay, we'll put you on straight commission. You contact them and tell them about that. And so I went out there and started calling on people that I knew through
to sell subscriptions
to
or
sell
ads?
Yeah. Hadn't done it. Used to sell chocolate almonds, in the band, and I was always the number one salesman. So anyway, I went out there and came back, and with the first issue, I was the top salesman they had, and then they wanted to put me on salary, and I said, I'll stay on commission.
We would like to thank our title sponsor, B1 Bank. B1 Bank knows that entrepreneurs like you are always thinking one step ahead. So you need banking solutions that can keep up. It begins with lending. Does your business need working capital or financing for new equipment? How about a real estate or a construction loan? Good news, the B1 lending team is ready to learn your goals and help you find the best lending option available. Now let's talk about uncomplicating your daily cash flow. B1 offers a full array of treasury management services that let you collect funds faster, pay funds more efficiently, and access your information with powerful online tools. Most importantly, B1 understands the value of working with local nonprofits to build a stronger community. They believe in giving back through hands-on involvement with their B1 Community Outreach Program because it's simply the right thing to do. B1 Bank. Be uncomplicated. To learn more, visit b1bank.com. Equal housing lender, member FDIC. Hello, I'm Andrew McClendon, your host of the Next Entrepreneur Podcast. We're here today in the Propel Production Podcast Studio in Baton Rouge, and we welcome our guest, Mr. Rolfe McCollister, founder and former publisher of the Baton Rouge Business Report for over 40 years, chairman emeritus of Baton Rouge Business Report, and CEO of McCollister Associates. Rolfe, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Congratulations on the sale of your business, Louisiana Business Inc., just at the end of last year, right?
Right.
So it's one thing to start a business and survive 3 to 5 years, right? It's a completely different thing to achieve 40 years of success in that business, particularly in the way that you did it, continually growing brands and products, continually innovating and creating. But the ultimate achievement is actually being able to successfully exit that business. It's a business person's dream to do it in the way that you did it. So a huge congratulations to you on that, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.
How does it feel?
It feels good. Yeah. We actually, when I announced to the staff, I brought a baton, and I said, that Julio and I, who had been partners for 25 of those 40 years, the last 25, I said, I'm passing the baton. And it was nice because obviously the staff was very knowledgeable of the way we did things and very comfortable with Julio, who was our CEO. And so it just was a smooth transition. And I also gave him a framed dollar bill, which I wrote on here, "The buck now stops here," and I let him put that on his desk. So, the
message is clear.
Yeah, so it's been a good transition, and things have continued. He loves the community, and the community loves him, and so, that's what you want to. You want to see your baby that's all grown up, continue on, and he and the team, he's got a great team around him, have continued on and just put out our 40th anniversary issue. Oh,
and it's beautiful. And what a work to look back on that piece and look at everything that you've seen and been a part of over 40 years. It really is amazing. So you're still writing a column
right
now?
I still write share my opinion, which that's the way I keep my blood pressure down, as I just put it all out there. And
that's great.
People don't always like it, don't agree, but, it feels good.
Look, you've spent 40 years being our city's biggest optimist, as well as a stalwart realist, not only in the assets that we have, but in what's broken in our city and what needs to be fixed. But you've never given up on Baton Rouge. You've never turned your back on Baton Rouge. You've only tried to make our city and our state better. And we're all better off for you doing the job in the way in which you did it. So I wanted to thank you for that at the start, for all that you've done.
Well, thank you. You know, God's been good to me and blessed me and given me great favor, and my wife has been there, you know, every step of the way, and I've had great people that I've surrounded myself, supported my role model, my dad and mom and my daughters, Elizabeth and John, and, you know, just a great team. And, you know, nobody makes it to the top or successful without a great team. And so Julio and Cherry have been partners for 25, you know, and it's been great, but I got to give credit to them and to God for his favor, and that's what's made it possible.
So you spent 40 years in the media business of living deadlines, daily, weekly, monthly. How hard is it to step away from that, or is that exceptionally easy?
Well, that's what people say. Oh, God, you miss it. You know, you love it, but, you know, I have a lot of things going on. I have 5 things today, in fact, you know, but it is tough because everything is, you know, I like that. Actually, that's why I got in it. I was looking at law, and I just couldn't focus on one thing and do it every day. I had to have variety, you know. I was called hyperactive as a kid. You know? I couldn't sit still, and so you know, when I get into the media as a part-time job when I was at LSU, it was great because, you know, it was like sprints. You know, you'd put out the issue and you could start over, you know, and then you create and you could start over. And so every issue was new. And so that's, you know, you sort of chop up your week and your day and your year into little bite-sized pieces, you know. So that was actually part of the thrill. But after a while, you know, like I said, you're always on deadline. It's sort of like the coach, you know, win the game, well, celebrate for, you know, an hour or two, but then you got to move on to the next game. And that 40th issue, I mean, I know what it takes to put together that, months, and then it's out, and it's like, we got another one. Let's start over, you know, and you're back. And so that's the pressure. And like I said, it's actually a relief in the fact that I don't have those deadlines. I mean, daily report twice a day, and it's 2 to 5 daily now. And then you've got, you know, products every week. You've got a product going out. You got events coming up, and these things layer. So you're putting out an issue, you're putting out digital newsletters, you got events coming up, the top 100, and so it's just it's invigorating, but it'll wear your butt out. You know, and after 40 years, I decided, hey, you know what? 40 is a nice round number, 4 decades, and you know, I felt time.
So we're going to talk about some of the new things you're doing, and I know that you are always going to stay busy, but you have had a taste of retirement. What did those first couple of months look like for you?
Yeah, well, I planned, you know, and like someone says, oh, you don't retire, you refire, you know, and what happened was I went through a program. There's a book called Halftime, From Success to Significance by Bob Buford, and it talks about how you spend so much of your life, you know, working, you know, for success. And then you start to realize, well, what's the second half? You know, do the things I still want to do that are significant, that want to have an impact, but it's not a job, it's not for pay, you know. And so I went through a program. It's called a fellowship program, and I went to Dallas, and I was with other a cohort of 8 people from. One had retired from Nestle's in Switzerland, moved back to Atlanta. One actually lived in South Africa. One was in Poland. They were around the country. Wow. Some were in business and looking at selling and retiring. Others had already done it. So we shared a lot of things, and they shared a lot with me. So I realized you prepare for something like this, and you start to probe, well, what are some things that I am interested in? Where's my passion outside of publishing? And so they told me the first 6 months, don't do anything. Detox. You know, don't agree because people are going to come after you. And I've had 4 nonprofits ask me to serve, and I've declined. Because I'm saying, hey, I'm following the advice. And my wife and I went on 5 different trips. Some of those were with our grandkids to snow skiing and the beach, and some of them were by ourselves and with friends. And so that's what we did for the first. So it was great. It was fun just to not have to take emails on, you know, when I take a vacation, you know, are you really free from the office? When the buck stops here, you know, can you really relax? And I couldn't, you know, I always was worried about, you know, what was going on back, you know, and so So this time, like I said, I didn't get those. I didn't have to. Julio's got it, and if you emailed me, it sent back an email said contact Julio@businessroad.com. And so he said, I'm getting those calls now, and I said, those are your calls now. But anyway, so it was fun. In fact, one trip we took with Julio and Sherry out to California, and so we really just had fun for 6 months, and now I'm just sort of like I said, I have a lot of people that call me and to go to lunch, or I'll call them, and things that I've wanted to do, people I've wanted to go to lunch with, I've called, and just to, I'm still on 4 boards, and so I didn't add 4 more, because, I've cleared the plate, and now I'm not going to just turn around and load it back up. So I still write my column, and so, those are things, Julio and I still get together. We prayed every Tuesday morning over our career, and we still get together. So we still have that bond and friendship, which is outside of work. I mean, it's a brotherhood, and so because that's really what it's about. In the end, it's about relationships. It's been a lot of fun, but now I'm, like I said, having a different kind of fun.
Yeah, good for you.
Getting to do this,
Yeah. Okay, Rolfe, so let's go back to where it all started. You were LSU grad, but how did you get into journalism? I seem to remember a connection with Gree magazine. Tell us about that.
Right. Well, I wanted to be a lawyer like my dad, and so I was in pre-law, and I started taking courses, and I actually worked as a courier at my dad's firm, and I'd see these lawyers, and I'd do the coursework and the reading cases, and then, watching them have to pick one type of law and sit at that desk and just do briefs and read and all that. And I just said, oh, man, I can't sit at a desk all day, and I can't just, do one thing. I like lots of flavors and activity. And so I said, Dad, I don't think I want to be a lawyer. Well, I had no plan B. And so my dad used to, when he was 19, after he graduated from Estruma High, he started a newspaper in North Baton Rouge, and it's called the North Baton Rouge Journal. And he was written up nationally in Newsweek as the youngest editor in America. So he had these bound volumes of the old papers, and I was flipping through them one day. I said, Dad, you did a newspaper? What's this about? Maybe I'll start a newspaper. And he goes, well, look, there's some guys that have Gree, and they want to start a weekly that would be home delivered, and they've asked me to invest because I was in the newspaper business, and so why don't you go talk to them and see if they have a part-time job while you're at school, figuring hey. So I went over there and I said, hey, y'all looking for somebody? I know a lot of people in Baton Rouge that I've met through my dad, and they go, okay, well, we'll put you on straight commission. You contact them and tell them about that. And so I went out there and started calling on people that I knew through
to sell subscriptions,
to sell ads. Yeah, hadn't done it. Used to sell chocolate almonds, in the band, and I was always the number one salesman. So anyway, I went out there and came back, and with the first issue, I was the top salesman they had, and then they wanted to put me on salary, and I said, I'll stay on commission. But anyway, I just started doing it, and I loved it, and I started learning production and how to lay out, and then I started taking photographs. They asked me to write a story, and I said, man, this is just fantastic, and so I loved the business, and I worked there 2 years. Then I took some journalism classes. I'd actually moved into University College. I took some journalism classes, and it's funny because what they were teaching in the class wasn't exactly what we were doing in real life back at the office. It's like, and I realized some of these professors, it's nice book knowledge, but it doesn't really apply.
Yeah. And
I even told one of my professors that, But anyway, after that, I graduated. I became ad manager after college, and after 4 years, we really had struggled because we were a general interest paper. Gree was sort of an underground paper, and it had its following, but we were general interest, home delivered, and we were competing against the Advocate. And my dad's paper actually went from a weekly to a 6-day daily with color comics. Again, the Advocate was in South Baton Rouge. He ended up selling it, went to war twice, got the Silver Star, and then he came back and went to law school. In fact, while he was in Korea, he got elected to the legislature ran while he was over there. I mean, he's got a fascinating story.
Oh,
but,
my goodness.
You know, he was on American Bank's board, started 2 banks, was real good friends with Jimmy Davis, and he was his state campaign manager in 71. And so, you know, a lot of things that I've done, you know, in 2 banks and governor's campaigns and publishing, you know.
It's fascinating.
Never got into law, but my brother's a lawyer, so he went that route. And, you know, again, we did the paper, and it never really, you know, we were against TV and radio and billboards. And so this idea was popping up around the country, business journals, sort of a niche. And, you know, business news always gets the, you know, back of the section and section D,
right,
you know, in daily papers because, you know, most of the readers aren't business people. And so anyway, I said, well, look at this. And I got one from Houston and New Orleans. You know, Bill Metcalf had started down there. And so anyway, we said, well, let's take a stab at this, you know, sector. And so anyway, I said, well, I'll head that up. And me and one writer, I did all the sales and he did all the writing, David Dodson. And so we started that, and we used the enterprise staff as support. Anyway, we came out of the box.
You started it as a separate brand?
As a separate brand.
Okay.
In fact, I got us a separate office, and so we were over here on Main Street and do the production with the enterprise. And anyway, I went out. Of course, when I went with the idea to the chamber at the time, they told me, they said, well, I don't know. What will you write about in 3 months? I'm going like, you're the chamber. You're telling me I'm going to run out of stories in 3 months? You know, here it is 40 years later. We hadn't run out yet, Andrew. But anyway, that was their response. I had another fellow tell me no. And, you know, my dad was always my backer and cheerleader. And then another guy, Chuck McCoy, who was LMB, I went and met him. And I said, what do you think about it? And he said, I think it's a great idea. You know, I'm going to have all my managers read it. I go, really? You know, and so I finally had one. But anyway, we came out of the box, and it took off, and it was niche because for business, we were the only game. And then I went to a convention, and they told me that they did business awards banquet, and they did a trade show and these other markets. Well, I came back and said, let's do them all. And let's just come back. We're going to start a trade show. I went back to the chamber and said, would you co-sponsor this trade show with me? They said, well, meet with our executive committee. So I met with the executive committee. I said, you get 10% of the proceeds. I do all the sales. I'll manage it. You get a booth there. You get your name and so forth. I just need a partner. And they go, well, what if we get egg on our face and it fails? I go, you're at the Chamber of Commerce Executive Committee. Why are you telling me I'm going to fail with a business show? I said, I'm going to do it with or without you. They said, well, let us think about it. They called me back and said, no, we're going to pass. So once again, the chamber told me, you know, well, we sold it out and had a waiting list. The next year grew.
And that was, what did you call that trade show?
Yeah, it's called the Business Expo.
The Business Expo.
And so, you know, we
did
grew.
Did that thing grow?
Yeah, it grew to 240 booths from the original 137, and it was the largest business show between Houston and Atlanta. And the chamber said, it might fail, so we don't want to partner. Yeah. Now, that was the old chamber, and they brought in new leadership and so forth. But you can just see, and you've heard the stories of Todd Graves and others, that everybody tells you no. Don't do it. You know what I mean? But you know, we believed that it would work, and so we did that. And then we had our first business awards, and we said we want to give out the awards for business. Others give an award for volunteerism and such in the community. But when it comes to business, our franchise, we're going to do that. So we created it, and I said, well, I need a really big speaker to bring attention. So I got Steve Forbes and wrote the check, and it sold it out, and people were like, what? You know, and so I got to stand up on the stage, publish your business board next to the editor-in-chief of Forbes magazine. So, you know,
brilliant.
It was one of those things that, of course, it took off, and we've remained friends now ever since. And he's been here, and I visited him in New York. But then we decided at a crawfish bowl one night, one of our freelancers was Jenny Peters, and I said, why don't we have a corporate cup race like they have in New Orleans? And she goes, yeah, I don't know. You know, we could do it. And I said, can you do it with me? She goes, yeah. I said, done. And we started the Corporate Cup 5K.
5K.
It grew to over 5,000 runners, one of the top 100 races. But again, it was just too much for us. We were publishers, you know what I mean? So we finally sold the race. But those are the things when it came to the race, when it came to the expo, when it came to the awards, when it came to publishing, and then later newsletters, digital newsletters with the daily report. We wanted to be the source. Yeah. And that way, you know, we figured if we we, one, could generate other activity and revenue by offering different products, but two, we could strengthen our franchise where it'd be hard for anybody to duplicate this.
Yeah.
And so that was what was really fun. And then later, after Daily Report, which took off, which Daily Report in April will be 25 years old.
That is amazing.
And I asked the guy, editor of Axio, said, did you know of a e-newsletter coming out daily before 2000? He said, you know, I can't remember anybody that was publishing before 2000. You know, when we were in 1998, in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, putting out a daily, you know, email. But those were the kind of things. So then we started spinning off. We tried Rouge Magazine, bought Baton Rouge Magazine. That was not the time in late 1980s. Closed it. Then we came
Was that
back.
like a lifestyle?
Yeah, Baton Rouge Magazine was a city mag, and we changed the name to Rouge and glossy. But the point is, it was so expensive to do glossy and full color that advertisers like, you know, here's the price of the ad, and you got to spend twice as much to produce a color ad. And so it just didn't work for this market at the time. But we then later came on with 225, and then later bought in Register, which is much what Rouge Magazine, you know, it actually started after Rouge closed. I had it for 2 years. But anyway, we bought that. So we ended up back with this social mag. And this time with production now, being able to do color separations on your computer, there was no extra cost. And so suddenly what was now possible made things feasible and affordable.
Yeah.
So it was just like, now it'll work. And we've been able to, you know, grow that brand. And so, you know, it's just a lot of things you learn. Times change, things change, and you know, now we can. A lot of the news you may get, we break the scoops on Daily Report, which we could never beat back when we were monthly. Beat the daily paper because they can put it out tomorrow. Well, now we can put it out in 30 minutes.
Yeah,
and we can distribute it worldwide.
Yeah,
and no printing.
Yeah, it is amazing. Look, when I had your partner Julio on last season, I normally start with a guest, you know, with them explaining what they're doing right now in their business to paint a picture of, you know, the magnitude of their business, what's going on. And then we back up to the story. Julio and I took 20 minutes going through all of the companies and the products and the events and the digital products. And it was just, it took the entire time just identifying what all he had purchased, what all you had sold, and that was really just amazing. Hannis T. Bourgeois provides accounting services, litigation support, as well as tax and assurance services to companies and individuals throughout the region. With offices in Baton Rouge, Denham Springs, New Orleans, and Hammond, their team of professionals have a wide range of specialized expertise and give personalized attention to each client they work with. HTB serves all types of business structures, including corporations, private businesses, startups, individuals, and more. So call them today to learn how they can help you. Reach out to them by phone or learn more at their website, www.htbcpa.com. A little testimonial here. HTB has been my accounting firm for over 30 years and have guided my initial company from startup to expanding to numerous operating companies. HTB has provided guidance in helping us expand across the U.S., doing business in more than 30 states. Flat out, HTB has made all the difference in the world to our business. This podcast is sponsored by NAI Latter & Blum, Louisiana's leading commercial real estate firm, offering expertise in every discipline, including office, industrial, retail, multifamily, and corporate services. Their agents guide you through the real estate process from start to finish, using a host of marketing, prospecting, and analytical technologies. As leading entrepreneurs, your valuable time and resources should align with the most trusted name in commercial real estate, NAI Latter & Blum. Learn how they can work for you at www.ladderblum.com. Turnkey Solutions is a nationwide cybersecurity and IT systems expert, providing the services that growing businesses need to stay ahead of hackers, hurricanes, and IT nightmares. With 24/7 support teams and offices across Louisiana and Texas, they bring peace of mind to companies of all sizes. Their 5-star rated team provides lightning-fast IT support with the cybersecurity and business continuity solutions today's businesses demand. When you're looking for a technology partner to provide you with peace of mind, find out more by calling them at 225-224-6594 or chat with them online at www.tks.la/NXT. I didn't want to get into everything that you've built over 40 years because that is an endless conversation. I did want to touch on some of the big ones. And, of course, the mothership is Baton Rouge Business Report.
Correct.
Right. You know, just phenomenal what you guys have done with that over the years. But the products, you know, that I put under that umbrella, you know, the book of lists, just an amazing amount of data in there that is very valuable to us. I mean, we use that on the regular. You know, back in the day, the real estate report had so much. It was a standalone publication at one point. I think it's part of an issue right now, but amazing content. And then 225. My goodness, the success. I remember when the first one came out, I was talking with Julio about this. It was huge. There were ads for days in there. I'm like, oh my goodness. But that thing took off, huh?
Yeah, it was funny because, you know, just to show you on timing and style, you know, Gambit came up here from New Orleans. Gambit's very successful in New Orleans, and Clancy and Margot. And they wanted to do it. They did a Gambit here for 2 years, you know, weekly, tabloid, free pickup, you know, and it never made it. And they actually contacted me and said, look, you want to buy it because we've lost money. This market doesn't respond to we're going to go back to New Orleans where we're very successful. And I looked at Baton Rouge and I said, I just don't know if there's enough businesses geared at the younger market. There's enough, you know, going on and all that to put out a product. And so I said, you know, we're going to decline. And it ended up being 3 years later, I'd seen Tommy Spinoza had shared with me the model for Perkins Road. And said, we're going to do this. I got all these retailers coming in.
That model was something.
I said, Town Center had already opened. And I said, look at the retailers there. He's bringing all these people here. You know, they must be coming because they see there's a market there for these type of stores, you know. And then I went up to Tsunami. The Shaw Center opened. Leah Simon was doing sushi on the rooftop. All these beautiful people are out there on the deck. And I'm looking at this and say, is this Baton Rouge? You know, and I said, you know, maybe we've, you know, evolved and we've become metropolitan. So I called Julio. I said, Julio, I think it's time now. Baton Rouge is ready. There's going to be enough of a younger audience as well as retailers and so forth. And so he said, you think? And so I said, yeah. I said, let's do a focus group. So we pulled together that target audience and we said, you know, do you guys use the Fun magazine? You know, there was a section on Fridays inside of the Advocate, and they ran the listings of every restaurant every time. Well, that's just a phone book, you know. I mean, that doesn't tell you where the new places are and what to eat and And so anyway, we said, you know, they said, where do we get it? And even, you know, with all the names we had, helped us choose the name 225, which now everybody uses. We don't call it Baton Rouge anymore. Everything's 225.
Yeah,
you know? But anyway, we said, let's go for it. So we hired our staff and we designed it, and we were ready to go. In August, we hired, and later August that month in 2005, Katrina hit. And here we were set to come out in November with our first issue. We went, oh, my goodness. I mean, Baton Rouge was inundated. People were coming. We were helping people find office space. We were helping find housing. Our friends, Julio, had lived in New Orleans. I mean, it was crazy around here. But anyway, we said, do we stop? Do we push back? Let's go. And we came out with that in November, and there were so many people in Baton Rouge knew that were saying, where do we go? What do we do? And all that kind of stuff. And it hit, and here was the answer. Boom, it took off, and it just skyrocketed. And we followed the same model where we started doing, you know, events hot off the press. We started doing a newsletter, email. You know, we started trying to do the same kind of things. We created Sunday in the Park, which is, you know, you have Friday Live After 5 on Fridays. You had Sunday in the Park there at the Shaw Center on Sundays with music and I used to go down there and put up the barricades and tell people to move their cars so I could have it free, with no cars on Sunday. And the Arts Council helped us get the bands and set up. So we had to create and keep feeding that market because we wanted to say Baton Rouge can be cool. We even had parents that would say, I will pay you to mail 225 to my children in other cities. I want them to see how cool Baton Rouge and move on. So we didn't offer subscriptions, but we had, about 60 or so parents that are saying, please mail this. This is the best salesman to recruit my kids back to Baton Rouge to show them what it's like. So that's where, again, we help people discover Baton Rouge, of things that are right here that they've not enjoyed. So it's been fun, and then the End Register has been a great product to help people. And again, it's a different niche. Each one of them are different niches, serving different audiences.
But everything was organically grown. Right,
yeah.
Other than In Register, which is
we bought that at 19 years old. They did, and then we redesigned it and kind of changed the content, and now we've had it for over 30 years old now.
So, I mean, when you look at the In Register, that you did 10-12 magazine, the events at Top 40 Under 40, huge deal. The Business Awards and the Hall of Fame, just a fantastic event. Influential women in business, the best places to work. It just keeps going and going and going. But on top of that, some relatively new things, I guess. The Executive Leadership Academy, a few years old. Studio E, a content and creative agency.
We had our 21st Business Forum, 21st Century Business Forum. We did that now, wrapping up 2 years, and got great speakers, Steve Forbes, Nick Saban, a lot of Drew Brees. And what we did was we took that and said, if we're going to do it for ourselves, why not do it for others? And basically offered that as a sort of like a Wheel of Fortune, a syndicated program, and we're in over 20 cities.
Amazing.
And that was during the pandemic when we said we've got to be creative. And necessity is the mother of invention, and we've always tried to be an innovative company where we constantly be looking, let go of old things, grasp the new trends, and see what's happening. Of course, we look at a lot of other cities around the country, other publishers. What are they doing? We're looking at best practices, which I wish Baton Rouge would do more of, to look at what other people are doing that works, let go of the status quo, and embrace change. And that's been, I think that's maybe held us back the most.
Well, I love talking business, but I particularly love dynamic businesses like what you have built. And I look at the common thread through all of those products and events that we just talked about, and quality is paramount on that.
JR and Penny, and they've just done a great, and Jen and Kelly, is that, we've won national awards and for all those products. And, JR, the business reports judged by the Missouri School of Journalism, Columbia School. And we won in our first year in the ABP, our national association. We won an award, and we've won every year since we joined 39 years ago. We've been, one or more, and sometimes as many as 7, and including twice we got the gold for the best large newspaper business publication, beating out Los Angeles, Chicago, New York, Detroit. And so, it is quality. And our deal was we want to compete. We want to be one of the best in the country. We don't want to we beat everybody in Louisiana. No,
it's not the gold award for a mid-level city.
No, it was
highest level.
Yeah.
But the other thing I'd say is that common thread is innovation and creativity, like constantly innovating. So you talked about digital content. So when you go back and you look at the Great Recession, 2008 and the years that followed were brutal for virtually everyone, every business, but particularly the print media really took it on the chin. Along with many others. But there were a lot of newspapers, a lot of magazines that just simply couldn't make it. Businesses were pulling back on advertising in print media right as social media was taking off, and they were going back in there and maybe reducing their costs. What is it about that time? How did your businesses survived that period?
Well, I think the idea, one thing that's always helped us is that being a niche media, where each one of them is a special market, where a lot of things of general interest and with dailies and so forth, those I think got hurt more than those that are real specialized. And so I think that was one thing, if you got to cut out some other things, what hits your target market best, And so I think that was one of the things we have. I think, again, the relationships with people and the events, people still like to get together and people still like to stand out. And so we still had our great events and we had sponsorships of those events. Again, people had to pick and choose, and hopefully what we found is that they cut, but they didn't cut us. And if they did, they didn't cut all of it, kind of thing. And again, creating other products and the digital products. And, as they say, if you can't beat them, join them. And so, it's like we're not going to fight, digital. We're going to have our own social. We're going to have our own newsletters. Again, one thing that we found, too, is that local is king. People would rather read local news than anything else because it's what affects them most. And we call it Main Street versus Wall Street.
Yeah.
And so, that's what's so successful about Daily Report, which has a huge open rate of almost 50%. People are going like, you got to be kidding. Axios says we like to shoot between the 30s and 40s. And what happened is that was a lot of original reporting about Baton Rouge. It wasn't just aggregated news. And so, again, having that relationship and having that local flavor, like you said, I'm worried about how the recession here affects me, so forget California or anywhere else. Right. So I think the relationship with the reader, I think the relationship with clients that we've had, I had some clients, Lee Michael's been there since year one. So, he's been there for 40 years, and he's in multiple publications, as is Mercedes. And he told me, he said, look, Rolfe, I'm in 6 different markets, and he said, y'all's group of publications are the best I deal with. And so, again, quality sort of reigns there. And so that's where I think what's up is that, quality lasts. And so if people have to cut, they're still going to do business. Not every advertising in at zero. Right. It's just down. So if it's down 8 or 10% or 20%, who gets the 80? And then it's the question of where's the relationships and are you the preferred choice? And so I think that's what kind of kept us through that as we continue to innovate and look at products and it's, again, we held on to our customers. And a lot of others around the country, papers, they've gone out of business, big time. So there's no resting on your laurels, and that's one thing we've always said. We got to get up every morning and say, hey, we may have had a great year last year. It's a new year. Nick Saban has a 48-hour rule. I'll celebrate this national championship for 48 hours, and then I start over because they're not going to give it to me next year.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So you had some digital content well in development, years in development, before the
10 years of Daily Report, 98. So in 2008, we've been at it 10 years building our base and all that and building that following. And so then with each other magazine, we spun off and set up the digital, the website, the e-newsletter. And so each one, that was part of our mix.
So much content. Yeah. It is really amazing. And then adding the other thing, the webinars, the 21st century.
Got into that,
When you look back, how would you define your management style?
I'm, Julio says I'm kind of strange in the sense that, I like to see things from a very big picture, point of view and try to look at it from all the angles. But then I also can get right down into the details. We say you sweat the details. It's like, so I see the big picture, but at the same time, it's the details that in the end make it, may matter. So on one hand, my staff may say, oh, Rolfe, you're micromanaging us. And so I don't like to do that because, we got tremendous talented people. But, I always felt responsible for the company. I was responsible to the employees, to the readers, to the clients. I worried about everybody being happy. And so, again, once you put something in print, it's in print. There's no going back, And so so that's where, again, it was just the pressure of wanting it to be just right. But, I hope that, like I said, Julio was a great partner, and he has strengths that I didn't have. And so there were things I just said, you handle those. They drive me nuts.
So y'all's relationship is really exceptional. When you consider business relationships with partners can be very challenging, particularly when you go through business cycles, ups and downs, and but the two of you really have created an amazing business relationship.
Well, again, it goes back to, I think we were careful going into it, sort of like a marriage, and I think our faith has really been a foundation of that relationship. Like I said, we pray every week together, and our families, I've watched his kids be born and grow up. He's watched mine grow up. We've been vacation together, and so it's a brotherhood, like I said, and not just a business relationship. And I think that's where we realize, there's some things more important in life than just, the bottom line. And so that's where, again, in a lot of these things, we've had our disagreements and we've had our rough spots, but we kind of kept it in perspective. And it's like, look, it's like a marriage. I mean, you know what, this is, we don't always agree, but you know what, you keep moving forward. And I think that we've seen, again, people have always been more important to me than anything, I mean, I always took it as, I want people to say, I love my job. I love coming to work. I mean, that was always so fulfilling to me. I've had people I run into, the best job I ever had. I had to move away or something came up. Or that's why I was at, business problem. So like, God, that's a reward I can't put a value on, So those are the kind of thing, and I think Julio and I agreed on that. And so, we just, kept moving forward, and God was good, and a lot of favor and a lot of peace, So, I'd have to say that was the key to our 25-year relationship. And like I said, ongoing. So we still, as I said, still get together and pray, every other week that I'm at the office. So usually that's the only time I'm back at the office at 6:30 in the morning on Tuesdays, But again, I'm here for him and he's here for me, and it has nothing to do with business, bottom line anymore.
So you're a big believer in studying best practices. How has that manifested in your business?
Well, like I said, anytime we would come back with an idea, I'd go to these conventions and I'd see what's happening around the country or whatever, and I would find out this influential women, or I'd find out about some other product they had, best place to work. I said, okay, now let me see your materials. All right, let me talk to me about your timeline and how you do it. What is can you have your promotions you did? So I look at everything they did and how many people did you have and so forth. So I went to school on them because I don't want to make the same mistakes. And so we would do that, and we would study what they did and look, don't do this. We tried this. This was I was like, okay, thank you very much. So we study those that have been successful. I mean, you look at anything. I mean, whether it's business or sports. I mean, there are people going to school on Nick Saban all the time, you know what I mean? And trying to say, what's his plan? What's his process? And a lot of it is his culture. We had him speak. I mean, he has a system. And new coaches come and go, new players come and go, but this is the way we win championships. Who's to argue, right? And so that's where, again, we try to study the best. I mean, the Leadership Academy, Julio went to Chicago. They did it and said, guys, tell me about it. Let's go through it and all that. And we came back, and, he's a great speaker and a leader. And so he added his own flair. Every time we take things, we do our own little twist. We'd come back and we would change it to our market because, not everything's going to work here. Right. A lot of people say, oh, let's get this for Baton Rouge. No, you need 1 million+ people to support something like that because only a small fraction will use it. And so you can't, say we need Major League Baseball in Baton Rouge. Ain't going to happen. Right. You know what I'm saying? And so that's, again, knowing the market, and but studying the winners. I mean, there's books. I mean, you've read the books about the greats, and I'm reading one now on the power of mentoring by, I'm blank senior moment here, but the coach, John Wooden. Yeah. John Wooden, the great coach, and he said, look, my job was coaching, but my purpose was mentoring young men. Mm-hmm. And so, that's where I'm working now with some young men because I'd love to pass on all the mistakes and lessons that I've learned, saying I don't want to just put them on the shelf. Somebody else can benefit from these. And I had a young man say, look, I want to talk to the gray hairs who are 20 years down the road. Tell me what's coming, because I can't talk to my peers. I mean, they only know what I know, you know. So this is the kind of thing that, as my station in life, and what they told me at halftime was, look, you've been the king. You know, you start out as a soldier, then you become the king of your domain, calling all the shots, responsible for everybody. But then you move on and turn over to the kingdom. Julio is now the king. I'm a sage. I just share my wisdom, you know. Yeah. And if you want it, I'll share it. If you don't want it, that's okay too. You know, I'm just passing on what I learned.
Yeah, that's a great thing. Pivotal is pleased to sponsor the Next Entrepreneur podcast. Pivotal is a commercial building contractor that performs new building construction, building maintenance, tenant improvements, renovations, and additions. Pivotal has been in business for over 25 years. The Pivotal team is simply the best. They have an impeccable safety record, and they crush schedules. A focus on quality and professional communication is at the root of their success. Pivotal also performs programs for clients who build in multiple markets, with current projects in Texas, Louisiana, and Mississippi. If you are looking for the perfect addition to your project team, a contractor who can deliver the results you need to succeed, Pivotal is the one. When it's critical, call Pivotal. They can be found online at pivotalperforms.com. This podcast is sponsored by Mayhall, Fondren Blaze, a Louisiana business litigation firm, offering sophisticated legal advice that is tailored to meet the needs of their individual clients, including a wide variety of litigation, complex business negotiations, corporate formations, closings, and title examination. As leading entrepreneurs, your valuable time and resources should align with the expertise of MFB, a Louisiana practice made for business. Learn how we can work with you at www.mfbfirm.com. Could you or your business benefit from a comprehensive financial plan? Our sponsor, Centura Advisors, is a locally owned firm in Baton Rouge, Louisiana that specializes in personal and business financial planning, tax planning, corporate retirement plans, and investment management. We provide an all-in-one wealth management service so busy business owners like you can take back your valuable time. Visit www.centura-advisors.com to learn more. Centura Advisors, it's time to plan your future. We could talk for days about all of the things that you did in business, but you've done so much more in your life, and I want to dig into that. And politics became a big engagement for you. Tell us how you first got into that on a state level.
Yeah. Well, like I said, my dad was in the legislature in the 50s and then became good friends with with Jimmy Davis. And when he was governor, 1964, and then ran his campaign. And I was in high school, and I went out and dug post holes and put up signs for Jimmy Davis, and that was my first taste of politics.
Oh, wow.
But 16 years later, Buddy Roemer, Edwin Edwards was governor, and I just became convinced we needed to change our image in Louisiana, and we needed to get a new governor and new leadership, new vision, and Edwards had to go, and I didn't know what I could do. I mean, I would write my columns, but then I said, I got to help somebody, and didn't know who, and heard Buddy Roemer at a breakfast, and man, he just wowed me. And so I just said, man, look, if you ever decide to do anything, let me know. He was congressman at the time from Shreveport.
Brilliant man.
Yeah, the smartest man I think I've ever known. And so anyway, he came back and called me and said, hey, can you meet me? I'm going to be in Baton Rouge, and said he was going to run for governor. And like I said, it was unusual for a publisher to get involved, but I wasn't the editor, and I left my editors alone to do their thing and cover the news. But I just felt I had to get out of the ivory tower and do whatever I could. And so I got involved with him and got a lot of people in Baton Rouge involved for the first time. They said, we agree, we need to do something. We call it was the Roemer Revolution, even have the T-shirt.
Yeah, he was going to scrub the budget.
Yeah, scrub the budget. And so anyway, Buddy came in there and got elected and beat Edwin Edwards, and Edwards dropped out the first night of the primary, and so anyway, I had learned a lot there. I was young, very young, and Buddy fought the fight, but look, there's a lot of status quo in the legislature, and the people of Louisiana, he was so far ahead of into the future. Yeah. The darkest day, I think, for me in my lifetime in Louisiana, especially politics, was that waking up that morning and having Edwin Edwards and David Duke in the runoff, after people had rejected a brilliant Harvard MBA, who left the office with less money than he walked in with, which everybody said corruption was our issue. It was clean as a whistle, and they go back to two guys who ended up in federal prison, both of them. Yeah. So I never have figured that one out, and it's a bad memory. Anyway, Buddy and I got to be friends, and we stayed friends, and later he ran again. Helped him in the 90s, but he didn't win. And
that's in 95.
Yeah, 95. And then had the idea, it served on a bank board because I'd met Milton Womack, who'd been the finance chair in Buddy's first campaign. And he had gotten me on the board of Sunburst Bank. Anyway, after it was bought by Union Planters, and we got off the advisory board and had the idea of starting a new community bank, which Milton had suggested the idea. And so I called Buddy, and Buddy had started two banks in North Carolina, and we had lunch. We went back to see Milton, and we said, well, maybe we could get Pete Boone, who was the former president, who was AD at Ole Miss, to come back. And he said, raise the capital and we'll move back. We love Baton Rouge. And so sure enough, Buddy and I made the list, and he made the calls, and he's a hell of a salesman, And so he raised millions, and Pete came down and ran a great bank and went 6 years, and Bancorp South purchased that bank.
So you were a founder in that bank
of that, and so the business bank, it was about four of us, and we sold that to Bancorp South, and there was no non-compete, and the plan was to move out of Baton Rouge all over the state. And so anyway, Buddy was like, well, hey, why don't we do it again? And so anyway, Business First Bank was born, and I was a founder with Buddy and several others, and Milton, and Jude Melville was, there, young, out of the Army after college, and he was helping us organize it and all that, and thought it'd be short term maybe, but putting it together. But anyway, we raised the capital again and started rolling out in Baton Rouge. Buddy was our president, CEO, and then eventually he turned it over to Jude, who was young but smart. He
turned it over to Jude when he decided he's going to run for president of the United States.
So we had a board there, and good board, but also a brilliant young man in Jude Melville. And so then he took it over, and not only had we expanded around the state under Buddy, but then Jude started doing acquisitions, and then went to Dallas organically and a Houston acquisition, and now it's approaching $6 billion under his leadership. And he's just done a fantastic job, but got a fantastic team that he's put together, and everybody in banking is impressed with him. It's just it was exciting, and Buddy did two in banks in North Louisiana, and was involved with two here. As I told you, my dad had been on the American Bank Board, but started two banks and sold them, Feliciana's Bank and First National Bank of Port Allen. So, it's a fun business. It's a great way to help people, build community. I'm so proud to be on the board, and along with you, Andrew, and some great people there. And it's just, it's one of the shining stars in Louisiana.
Yeah, there's no organization that I've been engaged with outside of work that's as gratifying as being a board member on B1 Bank, but particularly for all the reasons that you just said, and watching the team that's been assembled there and the growth. I think the world of Jude Melville and the team that he's built there, and I'm convinced he's one of the best CEOs in the business. Yeah. Following your father's similar patterns with things that your father's done in politics and banking. You also served on the Louisiana Board of Supervisors, not once, but twice appointed by two different governors. I always am impressed with anyone who's been appointed to that board because it's just such a massive, broad-reaching institution. So, but you also served as chairman, right?
Yeah, it was an honor to serve on that. It was my alma mater, and again, a way to, my whole deal is to, hey, what's my purpose on earth and my assignment, and how can I impact others and help others? And Baton Rouge is home, Louisiana's home, so you want to make a difference, and that's been about whether it's our companies or just individually. And in politics, the whole idea was to bring in, help people get elected that could improve things. Serving on the board was such an honor, and LSU is such an important part of flagship. I wish we weren't as parochial to where people recognize it as a flagship. Other states have two, with A&M and UT and Alabama and Auburn, Ole Miss. We have one, but we don't always treat it like the flagship, and because it's just unique. And, so much comes out of it, both for Baton Rouge as well as for the state, the graduates, the workforce. But, like I said, the two governors gave me that honor. One of the things I know we did on this is to get out of the charity hospital system. We had no business running a hospital system, hard enough running higher ed. But, Bobby wanted that done, and thank God before the pandemic we had turned it over to partners who knew what they were doing, because it would have been an all-out disaster. And we were the last state in the nation. Why we have to be the last one to let go of a safety net system? It's Huey Long. It's that legacy,
right,
that populism that's held us back. And this is, again, going back to we've got to embrace change in our state, in our city. And speaking of politics, like I said, I learned a lot from both of those governors. Knew that their heart was in the right place, because each of them could be making $1 million in Wall Street or anywhere else. There was no question. But they agreed to serve. And I tried politics. My dad got elected while he was in Korea, but I tried running for mayor back in 2000.
Right.
Didn't work out. And like I said, God may have been protecting me and my wife for that one. But that was where I went to other cities, right, and met with top mayors and said, tell me how you solved it. Everybody writing about you in the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times. But I came back here and I got criticized for going to visit other cities and asked them about their solutions. And it's like, well, why don't you think we have the solutions here? We're not smart enough. And it's like, well, if you got them, I'd like to hear them, because,
right.
And so it's that kind of mentality that we close up instead of reach out. And that kind of thing, that lack of vision. I mean, what is it we want to be when we grow up? What are we aspiring to, versus just more of the same?
Right. You've always been a great supporter of Baton Rouge, as I mentioned. What is it in your mind that we need to do now to make the biggest change? I can look back 30 years ago and say education. And there's been so many other things that have kind of festered along the way. What's your take on what we need to do as a city?
Well, I think there's a couple things. One, we have to embrace change and be open to new ideas. And, the other thing is we need to figure out where is our strengths. For instance, the water is a worldwide issue, and coastal and erosion and deltas, and the water campus and the water institute. And we've got world-class talent. Health, obesity, diabetes. We have world-class in the Pennington. Cyber. We're now getting to cyber with Stevenson as well as LSU. What are some things that we could draw people here, that entrepreneurs would say, hey, if I could connect with those people and work with those people, because, just trying to be like everybody else is like, we're behind. And I always love the quote, Wayne Gretzky, how'd you get to be the greatest? I skate to where the puck is. I don't skate to where the puck is. I skate to where the puck is going to be. And that's where, again, it's taken some risk. And, I don't know that we've been averse to risk. We're comfortable with the status quo, the way things have always been before. And I hate that phrase, it's like, well, that's not the way we've always done it before. Well, so what? You know what I mean? And we've lost people to other cities because they were welcomed elsewhere with their ideas. As I told you, even my own idea, or Todd's idea, it's like, don't do it. It ain't going to work. Don't do it. It's like, why that negative? Let's try it. There's nothing wrong with failure. Every entrepreneur's failed. So this is where I think that Baton Rouge needs to, have aspirational goals. I've thrown out the idea of, do we have a vision conference or something, where we bring in people to challenge us to what do we want to aspire to be? What are our greatest assets? What can we build on? We talk about the river. I wrote about the Alive project, which could have been there. You know what I mean? It'd be something people would come from around the nation and even around the world to see right on the Mississippi, which we'd never taken advantage of. And, it got beat 51-49. A lot of people, well, we don't want to do something downtown. Downtown gets everything. I mean, Get off of that. You know what I mean? Right. It's our downtown. We need a city manager. I mean, our form of government, bring in a pro. Frisco, Texas, you were there. Yep. Unbelievable city. Great city manager, pay him $375,000 a year. The mayor there pays $850 a month. That's what the mayor has a job and runs the meetings, but the city manager runs the city. Wow. And you get a professional to run the city. It's a big business, $1 billion business with 4,500 employees. Who's run something that big before? Not a lot of politicians who we elect over and over and over, and we wonder why are we still getting results. Well, you're not doing anything different. You're doing the same thing. Yeah. So I love Baton Rouge, and, I'm frustrated, a lot of times because I want to see it reach its potential, and we could be the star in the state, and we have been job-wise, but we could be star outside the state. And this is where, guys, the competition is not Louisiana. It's nationwide, and it's even global. Right. And Buddy understood that. Bobby understand that. And a lot of people saw that these guys get it. But in the state, people criticize and, want it to stay the way it is. Yeah. And that's a big risk.
I always sense that there are many instances where politicians maybe just didn't get out enough. Yeah. Just didn't go and see how things are done in other places. I mean, whether that had...
Yeah. Well, one of the things that I was involved with, and it was one of the biggest blessings, a guy called me, had a big buddy, Jim Geyser, said, come to a meeting, we got to start a different type school. Well, we didn't know what a charter was, and so he didn't know. We tried to start a place called the Learning Place, I think it was, and anyway, the school system said no, so we researched and found a charter law and brought it to the legislature and got killed the first year by the unions. But the next year we got a pilot, and then the next year. And now today, charters are all across the thing, and it's like, look at BASIS with 600-something people on the waiting list. Look at the people that have been in IDEA, and there's, all sorts of charters that have succeeded. These kids, thank goodness, had a choice. And so now today we're saying, gee, we help change the system, competition, And so, I'm for all kind of choice, whatever works for kids, but it's not about employment. And this is one of the things that Baton Rouge has slowly embraced. It's been a 25-year battle, Andrew, you know what I'm saying? But this is the kind of the new innovative products that are out there. Online learning is coming. Arizona State, they're going for 1 million students online. I've met their president, Crow, and he's an innovator. He's working with DreamWorks, and so that's the kind of thing is, innovation and leadership, and it's what's going to make it work, in my opinion.
You've been involved in so many organizations, nonprofits throughout your career. What would you tell someone starting out in business about the importance of community involvement?
It's just, we're blessed to be a blessing. My kids know to him who much is given, much is expected. And that's just the way I get out of the way I was raised. My mom and dad were big volunteers. My dad was honored in 1987 as a volunteer activist. I had the pleasure of being honored in 2018 as a volunteer activist. This year in November, my daughter, will be honored, and so
that is unbelievable. What a legacy!
So that's the kind of thing where, so much of it. I was blessed. With a home. I work with a lot of kids, and some of them have such traumatic experiences and such struggles, and that's why charters and Thrive Academy, which is a residential charter, and because they need that support at home, and they need that role model. And that's why mentoring, being able to, what are the role models for these kids? Like I said, I had a great one. and my parents and my wife and I have tried to set the example for our kids, and now our kids. I mean, our church healing place had a serve day, and I went and got my grandson, and we went out to Gardner Christian School, and he got in the flower beds and worked and picked up trash and sweated, and he's 9. But it's like the idea I told him, look, it's not about you, it's about giving back. Yeah. And so I think for any company, for any individual, like I said, we're blessed, and you need to pass it on and pay it forward. And so I would, that's just part of who we are as a company, one of our values at the Business Report, and just one that I've always been taught.
I would argue that you are not only a role model for your family, but for all of your employees. I would go so far as to say you've been a great role model and continue to be for our city and our state. And, the work that you've done throughout your career is very visible. And you're in the publication business, and we get to see what you do, as well as all of these other extracurriculars with politics and banking and LSU service. And you have impacted people throughout your career and will continue to do so. And I'm grateful for what you've done for our city and our state. Let's wrap it up with a final question. I know that you've started McCollister Associates. Just curious what your vision for that is over the next few years.
Yeah, I'm just kind of wait and see. Like I said, my wife and I have both been pondering that and kind of adjusting, with the transition. Got a lot of time that we spend with our grandkids, and that's the real joy in life. But, we're taking another trip in October for 10 days, just us to the beach, just to chill out, no agenda, and get time to read and think, and we pray about what's in the future, and just kind of have stayed loose. Tara Broussard, who's been my assistant, continues to work with me, and I'm involved with, again, some nonprofits and some other activities, and we have some opportunities right now. Some people are approaching us about, hey, can you help with this? Can you help with that? And I've kind of avoided anything permanent,
right.
Any kind of long-term. So I've been, kind of keeping short-term to see what opens up, and also where my passion is, because like I said, I've been blessed in selling the business, and now it's kind of looking at where you can make that significant contribution.
Yeah.
To Baton Rouge, to impact others. And so, like I said, I'm kind of the sage role now, just to use what I've learned all these years. And if I can, help others or mentor some young people along the way. I had people that mentored me, that helped me. Buddy was one of those, Milton and my dad. And so, I feel, an obligation to give back, once again, and, just try to impact our community to make it better. So,
well, you are a wealth of knowledge and experience and information, so I can see where you would have a lot of people reach out to you. Look, it is a great honor for me, Rolfe, to be able to talk to someone of your caliber, and so I thank you for sharing your time with us.
Glad to be here.
Thank you, sir. What a great honor it was to have Rolfe McCollister in, one of the most accomplished people you could ever imagine. One of the great things about Rolfe, one of the many great things, is his spirituality and his faith. And I serve on a board with him in which he opens the meeting in prayer each month, and it is one of my favorite things to listen to. The man is so grateful for all the gifts in life, and he has a gift in expressing that, and I love to pray with him and listen to that. He is everything that you could ever wish a mentor to be in life, and I am grateful to call him a friend. I am grateful that he has led our city and state in the way that he has. Thank you, Rolfe. We appreciate you guys watching, and we will catch you next time. We would like to thank our title sponsor, B1 Bank. They can be found online at b1bank.com. The Next Entrepreneur is produced by Propel Productions. You can find more information at propelyourstory.com. Don't forget to subscribe to the Next Entrepreneur podcast and hit the bell for notifications. You can also follow us on social media. The links are in the description below.